Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? All right.
I might as well say hi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome to our first.
Are we doing this? This is it?
Huh?
We're doing it.
We're doing it.
Shit.
So welcome to our first video podcast here in Odense, where I live. Jonathan is visiting, and
Yeah, it's kind of like being welcomed into somebody's home or into your home, Tobin.
yeah,
It's very, very intimate.
yeah. And Jonathan, you were in charge of choosing the topic today, following your with emphasis on following your intuition. And what did you come back to?
I came back to that perhaps the topic is yet to be uncovered in the conversation we have. Because most of the time, if we're able to listen to the intuition, then something appears, right?
Yeah.
And so we're trusting in that right now. In that, this is really interesting because I keep going to look at the camera.
Yeah.
So I notice I'm self aware or self kind of like conscious, you could say.
What do you, if you find yourself self-conscious, what do you do? Because I think we all know what it feels like to be self-conscious, but what do you actually do when you're self-conscious?
Well, I feel like I get, like maybe I feel nervous or something, and I try and control the situation.
Yeah.
In a certain way. So right now, controlling would be like knowing from you, do we look at the camera or do we look at each other? What is the rule here? What is the way of behaving in this situation? Because it's something new to us. This is like a new thing we're trying out, right? And so I think me and maybe other people also resonate with this of like trying to control the situation to make it more comfortable, I guess you could say.
And some people spend their whole lives trying to control themselves out of fear, right? But so what I'm interested in, if you feel self-conscious right now, what do you do to sort of land in that, arrive in that? Because a lot of our viewers, I'm gonna look at the camera now, seems natural. A lot of our viewers are conscious people, which means they're waking up. That means a lot of their energy has gone into their mind. And that means they experience a lot of self-consciousness, because sometimes that's where the energy goes, right? So how would you advise someone when they feel self-conscious, either if they find themselves in a situation, because right now you're self-conscious, so what do you do from that position? Where do you go from that? How do you regulate yourself?
How do I regulate? So literally right now as we're talking about this, then I'm just going into the feeling where do I feel self-conscious? Is it like, am I tensing up? How is my body reflecting this? How am I so just going into that feeling. So for example, right now I feel that like in my stomach area, it is like a bit tight and a bit like, it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because now I'm like putting my awareness to that part and it's even stronger. And so a part of me wants to run away. A part of me wants to be like, fuck, this is uncomfortable. I just don't want to do this and just like escape the situation. And but I'm just right now I'm allowing myself to feel that, not to feel that maybe anxious feeling or whatever is there, self-conscious thing, or feeling the tenseness in my shoulders, and just being in that. And that's how I regulate it, just really going into that, being curious, finding out where that is. Can I put a word around it? What is it?
Because you're already less self-conscious now, and now you're regulating.
Yeah, because you can sense that, right?
I can sense that. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's almost as if your whole body squeezes up, and then the tension comes up in the head, and the head is like, oh, I have to run away. I have to go away. But what you're doing then is you're being, okay, you're going into the body, you're observing where is all the squeezing happens, and you're like, okay, it's here, the stomach, I'm allowing the chemicals of fear that are erupting, I'm allowing it. You're just kind of allowing all of it. And then all this tension that was pushing the mind to do something is then slowly allowed to relax and whatever. And then you slowly regulate your nervous system, regulate your emotions, allow everything. And then you come back to your center, and then you can speak from your center again, instead of talking from this agitated little mind, which is trying to fix the panicking body, right?
Exactly. And as Caravan always does, he says things with such a poetic clarity. And so what I want to know is, maybe it's interesting for people listening too, where have you learned that clarity from? Or is this coming to you right now? Or is this is this something that you do regularly to have that clarity, or how? Yeah.
Well, I think there's two aspects to it. My clarity comes from the fact that I've looked at myself so clearly so much. So if you observe yourself for 25 hours, or sorry, I should say 16 hours. If you observe yourself for 16 hours, you get a lot of insight as to what's going on inside you. And then when someone asks you, or you observe in other people, the same thing that you have, it's very easy to talk about it because you have an amount of clarity.
And knowing.
But then if you observe yourself for a week, that becomes more clear. If you do it for a month, it becomes more clear. And if you do it for 16 years, like I've done, there's a clarity in that. So I've never practiced clarity. I've just practiced observing, and then through the observing, the clarity comes because I have seen it so many times in myself and others. So that's one part. The other part is I'm talented with language. So that's just something I'm born with. That's not something I can take. I can't take any.
You have an interest in it, right?
Yeah. It's not something that, it's not something I did. I was just born with a talent for language and an interest in it. So when I say things, there is a poetic quality, there is a clarity, whatever. And that's just how I was born. It's not because it's not me. I was just given that. It's like you're naturally patient, which is a quality that I think is really useful. Or I don't know if you're naturally patient, but at least you seem to be naturally patient.
Can I just pause there for a sec, Torin? For many years, I would never have considered myself patient, and the fact that you're reflecting that of me right now is really interesting, because that's something I think I've worked on quite consciously, and so the fact that you're reflecting that is an interesting signpost, you could say. Yeah.
But we all have innate abilities and characteristics. There are things we're naturally going to be better at. But when it comes to clarity of language and clarity of understanding, that all comes down to one, observing clearly and for a long time. And then two, it comes down to being comfortable, trusting your spontaneity, your intuition completely. Because even now, I have no idea what the next word is going to be, and I'm comfortable with that. And so, because I have no wavering, that everything is perfectly laid out, because I'm just following the unborn mind, the mind that I can't see is laying everything out for me, but I don't know what's coming. If I was coming, I would be like, I would be wavering, because I would be afraid. What if this thing isn't going to give me what I need when I need it?
And for people listening right now, and have never heard the term the unborn mind, what is that?
Well, the unborn mind means the unconscious mind, Or in other words, it's the part of your mind you can't see. You can only see it when it comes with an answer, when it gives you something. So you don't know that it's there, but by the fact that you suddenly have intuitions or answers or understandings that you never thought about in the first place, you can then extrapolate that there is a lot of understanding going on in a place you can't see. And because you get a fully finished, packaged answer or understanding or realization sometimes, you see that there must have gone something into creating this. And the thing that creates it and the thing that gives it to you is the unconscious mind, which we call the unborn because that's what they call it in one of the Zen traditions that we're talking about now and then.
Yeah.
But the unconscious mind is the mind that takes care of everything. And the spiritual path, if you ask me, is to stop relying on your conscious mind, which means the one that requires you to think, and start relying on the unconscious mind, which really doesn't give you anything until you need it, which requires a lot of trust.
A lot of trust.
But everything you create through your mental mind, just your conceptual mind, is always going to be a little bit lifeless and lacking something, because you created something, but the conceptual mind is like artificial intelligence. It has a lot of information, it can do a lot of things, but whatever it makes it not quite right. Something's missing. And now what everyone wants is they want to feel the spirit of life, they want to feel alive, they want to feel spontaneity, they want love, happiness, joy. They want all these spontaneous sensations. And an AI can't do that. And this AI can't do that. But your unconscious mind, that's where life lives and that's where it comes out. So. And that's why we'll often go silent in our podcast, especially when we're doing the Yurt episode, is because the unconscious mind doesn't show what it's thinking. What it does is it's just silent, and then an answer comes out of nowhere.
And this nowhere is the unconscious mind, or the unborn.
And you can't see it.
No.
You don't know where it is.
And if you try and see it, it will always escape you.
Yeah. So it's like,
don't try and look for it.
it's like having a guardian angel that always helps you when you need it, but you can't see it. So you can either, through great effort and fear, try to make sure everything in your life is in control. You plan for everything. You have every contingency ready, and you're using so much effort to making sure nothing goes wrong. And everyone burns out on that at some point. Or you can trust this guardian angel. You can't see it, but there's proof that whenever you need it, it's there. And this so-called guardian angel is just your own mind, your unconscious mind.
That is, like, it's not just in Toban, or just not in me. It's in every single person listening to this and on the planet. Like, it's within us all, isn't it?
Everyone is born with it.
Yeah. Then we get confused in our mind, or we listen to our thoughts. This, like, what did you call it? I forgot the word. You said it had another name for it. There's something mind. Basically, where thoughts come to us. You referenced like the AI.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I called it the conceptual mind.
Mind.
But it's really also what we call the ego, right?
Yeah, different names for the same thing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, right? Because I'm not sure if we're all aware that we have this. Like, the more, like, the day we do realize is quite a pivotal day in our lives, when we realize that the thoughts we're having are not necessarily us. That we're actually that we're behind the thoughts, or where there's another part of us. And I think that's a really kind of important thing to kind of sit with, I guess, is like, because how much of our life, or not our life, but in general, people's lives, they have a feeling or they have a thought, and they act from that thought, from that feeling.
Yeah.
And not aware of, like, there's something behind that place.
Yeah, and I think that's that's sometimes the conflict in our world, is that we have these people who are still living where every thought and every impulse they just follow, right? And then we have the people who are waking up, who are starting to see that when there is a thought, when there is an impulse, then there is also the space to make a new decision or a new action instead.
New choice.
Or yeah, exactly. Or to do nothing, right?
Yeah, that's also.
And sometimes that creates a lot of conflict, because sometimes a conscious person, especially with family and stuff, you might come to someone in your family or your partner or whatever, you might want something, but they're on the pre-conscious level, so that they're not equipped to give it to you at all. They're in a whole different way of existing. And so you have to understand that these people they're not where you are.
A good example of that is was something that just came to me, and then you talked about family. So then therefore I know it's like the thing that you also grabbed.
Oh yeah, it's in the air.
Yeah, so and that was like, I'll just be open. But a few days back, like I was with my wife, and she reacted emotionally about something.
As we do.
I don't even know if it was about me or it was about something. I don't think it was even about me, but anyway, there was this emotion, and it was quite alive and quite like explosive, and she reacted in a certain way, and I just did, like, I didn't give her another reaction. I didn't react to her emotion. I just kind of like, actually I just stayed in silence. So I didn't even respond to the emotion. And for her, that was like, I think it was like kind of like, it was a bit of like confusion, and like, where does she go with that? Because it's like, we're so used to, or she's, I think, used to like, yeah, me giving her a response, or like in some way. And in this moment, I just actually didn't, because it was such like a clear, for me, it was a clear just emotional reaction, and she was just coming straight from that. Yeah. That I knew that like, okay, if I do anything right now, then maybe that would just make it even stronger.
You were so conscious that it was so apparent to you that what was happening.
Yeah, it was very, very clear, and I was just like, you know what? This is a moment I just.
I will be the space for this.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing, because I'm not saying here that I'm avoiding that.
Right.
Like if I was avoiding it, it would be uncomfortable within me as well.
Yeah.
And I would be like, oh, shit, I need space with this.
Right.
But in this moment, I was like, it's a clear emotional reaction that she's having to maybe a thought or something, or fear or something like this.
I think what you're saying is you weren't switching off, you weren't closing off to it.
No.
Because some people do that.
Yeah.
And that's not it. But you were giving space to it. You were being space for it.
Exactly. And then after some minutes of her being in this emotion, then it was it wasn't there so strong anymore as well. So it's an interesting thing of like how we. I think in general, if we're coming from our minds in a relationship or any kind of problematic situation, we're like kind of told to fix that thing. There's an emotion, let me try and help you with it, or distract, or like there's sadness or there's anger or something, and there's, for example, anger, and it's just like, how do I get you to calm down? You're angry, that's in my mind, it's a bad emotion, or in a lot of people's mind. So how do I get you to cool down, calm down? How do I get you to fix that anger or fix that sadness? And the crazy thing is, like when we try and fix anger or fix sadness, what happens?
Yeah.
It's like gets stronger, right? It's more explosive, it's more alive. It keeps coming back. The more we avoid it, the more we it keeps returning, or the more we struggle with it or kind of get caught up in it. It just kind of gets stronger and stronger until something happens, right?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because we may have been taught that we're trying to help the person, But if we look at the truth behind it, are we trying to help? No, we're saying, I can't deal with your emotion. Let's fix it.
This is uncomfortable as well for me.
We're refusing the person space to be in this emotion. We find it difficult. We tell ourselves we're trying to help them, but we're not trying to help them. We're trying to help our own, as you say, uncomfortableness to go away. So, and that's important to remember, that no matter what we tell ourselves, the truth is what interacts with the world. So if we tell ourselves what we're doing is really good, but it's bad, then bad things come out of it. So that's why we must always be honest and look at why we're doing what we're doing. Because it's the intention that will manifest the result. So if I believe that I'm helping someone by trying to get their anger to go away, but actually I'm just uncomfortable with anger, then my help, no matter how good-hearted I think I am, will teach the other person that their anger is not supposed to be there and that there's something wrong with them. So we must understand that if we look at our intentions underneath our rationalizations, we find the truth. And that tells us what we're actually doing. And we must come to a place in our lives where our intentions are good, not just our rationalizations. Because good intentions leads to good outcomes, and bad intentions with beautiful rationalizations, romantic ideas, lead to shitty lives. And a confusion. Why is my life shitty when I'm so good? It's because you're not that good. You're not that good, bro. Because people really aren't that good. We're mostly very selfish creatures. But we can still come to a place where we're good for each other most of the time.
Okay, so here's the question. If you're coming from a place of a good intention, so same situation happens in a relationship or in a communication with someone.
Yeah.
Someone gets angry or someone gets sad, or there's an emotion that it brings up an uncomfortableness. If you're coming from a good intention, then from what you're saying, how would you act in that space? If you're not trying to fix the problem, fix the emotion, fix the thought, how would you act?
Well, I wanna take this back to your wife reacted emotionally in an explosive way, and we all do that, by the way. It's not something your wife does; it's something I do as well. You do as well, and I'm sure our listeners experience it as well.
And there's been many times where either I've got emotional and she's reacted to me, or she's got emotional and then I reacted to her from something she said or something. There's an emotion in this space, that is with any relationship, it's like it's inevitable that will be in this space.
So I wanted to say that another subject we've been talking about is like conscious relationships. And one of the really interesting thing about conscious relationships is that when you stop reacting to someone else's reaction, you create that space like you did for your wife. So normally, one partner will react emotionally, the other partner will be pushed into their emotional reactivity, and the emotions react back and forth, and their egos will get to play, and everyone will be exhausted and emotional afterwards. But when one person reacts and the other person gives space, that gives the person who's reacting the chance to, again, act in a new way, to get a new choice. So giving someone space when they're reacting is an incredibly powerful tool for transformation, because the space that they couldn't find themselves, because that's what we do in spirituality, that's why we meditate, right? What we're looking for is that when we act emotionally, then we get that space. And we can look at our emotions and thoughts, and we can be like, do I really want to do this? Is this what I want to follow? Is this the horse I want to ride on, right? But when we're in relationships, we can give that space to other people, so that in a conscious relationship where both people are spiritual, we can help each other to have space when we don't have space. We can't do it every time, but we can become the space that they need in the time that they're reacting. And then we can break reactivity patterns that we created in childhood and has continued with partners, with parents, with friends, with colleagues for decades.
Because that's the thing, all reactions are based on our past
right.
life of some traumas, some ways of our parents teaching us that this is how you react, some rules, different ways, but it's all related from our past.
Yeah.
So if we keep doing that, we're going to get the same result. If we keep reacting from the same place, the same issues, the same problems are going to keep reoccurring. Maybe not in the relationship you are in now, but maybe in another one, or maybe in another context, the same thing will keep occurring, right?
Yeah.
Until we... You're saying?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that our reactions are designed to reinforce our elusive belief. So, for example, if the partner feels that they aren't heard, then they're gonna lash out emotionally to a point where the other partner is probably gonna be unable to listen to them because it's too painful, which is a reasonable response. But the reason the person is feeling like they won't be heard, and now they're recreating that situation again. So the pain actually recreates the situation that started it. So that our reactive patterns show us over and over again that this is true. So if you don't feel you're good enough, you're going to keep creating situations where you make other people treat you as if you aren't good enough, or that they aren't listening, or that they don't value you, or that they are scary and you should be afraid of them. Whatever it is, your patterns are going to create the situations that created the patterns or the trauma in the first place. And that's why this space is so powerful, because as you say with your wife is like, what is happening right now? Because why is your wife reacting emotionally in that moment? It's because there's a story in her mind that has just arisen, that something is terrible. There's an emotion with it, and she believes that story completely. And now she's going to make you react, and you're going to play the role. You're going to get the mask on. Whatever situation she's playing in her head, you're going to be put the role. You're going to be her father or mother, whatever it is, and you're going to be playing your role in this reactive, emotional, traumatic role play that's going on. So, and her behavior is designed to make you react that way. So she's going to put on her mask, then she's going to put the mask on you, and then you're going to play out some kind of situations from her past for the next hour or 2 hours, whatever. Some point, you're going to wake up and be like, wow, this is terrible. Why are we doing this to each other? We love each other. Let's stop doing this. And you're going to be like, that was terrible. Let's never do that again. And then it's going to happen 3 days later again. Because her impulsive, emotional, irrational, painful behavior is designed to elicit the response in you that she got originally, which created the pattern by having someone that didn't listen or whatever. So when you give space, you destroy the whole thing, because now you're standing there with your mask on and the other person is just a person. And that's very, very, it can be very uncomfortable, because all of a sudden you realize that something is out of line here, something is out of alignment. I'm in this reality, but this person is projecting a different reality. And now all the pain, all the uncomfortableness, all the old trauma that she's used to, she gives half of it to you, and then you play the role. You won't take it on you. You're saying, I'm just going to hold space. I don't want it. You're not fighting. You're not ignoring. You're giving her nothing. You're just holding space. And so her whole play, her whole theater play starts falling down. And that can be very painful, because what's left with when all the escape mechanisms are gone? Well, there's only the pain, right? Then you can only face the pain. And if they get to that point, the partner can help them with that. But
that's the thing, like with that, it's like because the place that I'm coming from, that I'm able to see the reactive emotion for what it is.
Yeah.
And I can see through that to the person that she is as well. And I know that this is like, so the idea that I can see it and see her as well in the same time.
Yeah.
Also gives me the conscious, or the awareness to not be pulled into that.
Yeah.
Just to give space and see her.
Yeah.
Give space for it and like still lean into it.
Yeah.
But not like react from it. So.
And when you do that with someone, it's very interesting. If you do that with someone, one of two things are going to happen. or 3 things actually. Sometimes they just keep fighting until you react because they start throwing things. But but what's going to happen is either the person they're going to start letting go of that reactivity pattern, and they're going to heal that trauma, they're going to stop doing it, or they're going to escape from you and avoid being with you because you're triggering the emotion, and you're not letting them wipe it off on you. You're forcing them to be with the emotion themselves.
Which we, of course, hope that if you're in any loving relationship, that you're able to, that the other person is able to like work with that emotion or work with that, whatever is going on, whether it's a trauma or whether it's a, whatever it is.
And mostly in love relationships, people are not going to run away, but
so that you're able to release that, to let go, and to be communicating in a way that you like, that's important to you.
Yeah,
I think for most people it's in a loving way, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I think it's just an important thing to kind of note.
Yeah.
Because we actually have a different idea about this, I think.
Yeah. I'm much more.
You're much more. Go on.
I have a much lower tolerance when it comes to bullshit.
And my tolerance is probably. I'm not sure if it's tolerance actually. Would it be tolerance? What do you say?
Depends on your paradigm. For me, it's. For me, I'm only going to spend time with people who really have chosen the path of happiness. And so if people aren't sure about that, and they're holding on to stuff, and they have things that they're kind of like, oh yeah, but I wanna indulge in this, and I wanna be miserable about this, whatever. I got no tolerance for that kind of thing. I'm not about people who haven't entirely chosen the path. If I'm gonna be friends with someone, which for me is a big word, it's not a small thing to be my friend, not for me anyway. I have a lot of acquaintances and I have few friends. If you're gonna be my friend, you're going to emotionally be responsible of your own space and your own environment. And you're gonna make sure that space is a positive space as much as it can be. Doesn't mean you can't be sad. You can have all kinds of emotions, but you're not going to go looking for those emotions and creating them on your own because you wanna indulge in drama or whatever.
And that's the difference between you and I.
Yeah.
Because like I think I find myself at least coming from the place of like acceptance of that person, wherever they are on their path or their journey.
Yeah.
And of course, it's much more challenging with people you see every day and they're close to you, right?
Yeah.
But either way, I find my way of seeing people is in general like that everyone has an innate good in themselves. At times, our minds or our emotions cloud that judgment or cloud that view, and I see it as my kind of thing, or my kind of way of being with people is to accept them in a way or see them in a way that also gives the space for them to at some point in their journey see that within themselves as well. And I feel so strongly about that if I am seeing that person that way and communicating to them in that way as well, then at some point they will wake up to that, to be able to experience that in themselves. It's like a reflection kind of thing, you could say.
Yeah.
But it's also a place of acceptance that we are all human, that we all fuck up, we all have problems, we all have challenges, and we all get caught up in our mind from time to time, or we get emotional, or we get stressed, or whatever it is. And that is part of being human. And then underneath that, we're all whole as well. We're all like a human being that like we may think we're broken in a certain way. Maybe because of our upbringing, our childhood, our trauma and things like that. But it's like if you keep taking those layers off, if you keep working on yourself and going within, then you realize that there's a pureness, there's a wholeness to us all that's there underneath that.
Yeah.
Not sure where I was going with that. That's a bit of a rant. But
no, I think it makes sense a lot. And I think it's a very admirable perspective, and I think it's a very admirable thing to meet people wherever they are on the path and try to accept them from where they are and to have faith in them wherever they are. I think that I admire that about you. I wouldn't want to do it.
You don't do that though. You choose.
I don't do that, but I admire that you do it. But for me, it's it takes too much energy out of me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not capable of understanding someone who the people I talk to and spend time with are usually people who want to be. There are people who are at this energetic level, but they've realized that they want to be at this energetic level, and so I fast track them there the best I can. But there are people who are at this energetic level, and they have potential to go somewhere, and they talk about it, and they want to feel better, and all these things. But when you start to write them, they start fighting you. They start fighting you towards trying to help you with the thing that they want to achieve, and that for me is unacceptable. Like if you want something, and if you can do it, and if someone comes that can help you with it, and then you fight them, that for me that's a cardinal sin for me. That's insanity, and in the end, it's disrespectful too. So for me, I don't have acceptance for that, and I don't understand it, and I wouldn't do that myself, I think.
So you wouldn't do it yourself, therefore.
I think I would like to think so, but who knows? We're always more flawed than we think, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and that's yeah, and that's probably because I've always felt that the truth is the truth, and you have to. The truth is the only thing in life where you have to. Everything else has to be arranged around the truth. So if someone comes with a new truth for you, well, you have to arrange your life around it. Because if someone comes with the truth for you and you can recognize yourself, this is true, then you have to organize everything else around that truth, because the truth is the primary thing.
So you're saying you adapt to the truth?
It has to. If someone comes and tells me, you've only been looking for love because you feel like you're missing something, and love's not going to fix that. And if then I realize that that's right, then I have to accept that truth and I have to do something about it. But there are people who think that the truth is negotiable, and even if they are told the truth and they recognize that it's the truth, they don't put that as their guiding principle. And so what happens? Well, they're the same people you're gonna have to listen to again and again. They're like, oh yeah, hello, yeah, I have the same problem again that I had 1 week ago. Oh yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, he still doesn't like me. Oh, but I'm gonna stay with him anyway. Like this shit, I'm not gonna listen to it. Like if you figure out some kind of truth, you have to organize your life around it, or I'm not gonna waste time on it, because it wastes my energy. Like,
can I ask you, like, because you've said this thing about truth a few times here. How do you recognize that this is truth and this is something somebody has an opinion about that comes from their should or shouldn'ts, or their opinion kind of thing?
Well, if someone tells you something and it's the truth, then you recognize on an internal level that this fits with what you feel and see as well. Then it kind of clicks.
Okay,
whereas
so it's like a kind of, yeah.
So all you can ever
kind of.
That's actually an important point, because I see a lot of, especially women are bad at this. A lot of women on the spiritual path will have some consciousness, some understanding, and then they go around reading books from all kinds of idiots, and they listen to all kinds of idiots, and they come to me and they tell me about these different concepts and ideas and all that stuff, and I keep telling them, this is idiotic, and you know better self. You know more than you're studying people.
Not only women, that's me as well.
You're studying people who know less than you because you don't want to trust yourself, right? And so what does it always come back to? If someone tells you something, if you read something, then the only thing you should ever be doing as a person is feel inside and see if this reflects your own truth. Does it sound true? Does it feel true? If it does, you've only seen that it is something that's already true for you. You've only recognized your own truth because you already knew whether this was true or not. So then you've recognized a piece of your own truth. You've remembered it. And if it's not true, then discard it. And in that way, you can go on finding your own truth. But if someone tells you something and you don't feel first, then you get an idea instead. Now the truth,
you get stuck in
the truth, when you recognize the truth, you don't need to remember it. It's always going to be there because it's in your unconscious mind. But an idea you have to remember, you have to understand, you have to keep it alive, you have to remember it. So you have to keep putting it together or it'll disappear. The truth is not like that. So truth, when someone comes from an outside opinion, there are things that you don't understand, you have to remember. It's not the truth. There are things that it feels like people are they're trying to force you into it.
Tell you a certain thing.
Right, that's not the truth either. But then the truth there can be two kinds of truths. There is a truth that resonates with you where you're like, oh, this is uplifting, this is wonderful, this is true, I'm going to start living it. And then then there's the other truth that says, oh shit, I've been doing something really wrong. And both truths are incredibly important. Because the one that uplifts you shows you a new way of living more energetically, which will give you a better life. But the one that shows you that you've been living wrongly, that's going to remove pain from your life. And that is something that you're going to feel very significantly.
And that also requires, that truth also requires a strong willingness to actually hear the other person or to receive that without getting defensive towards that.
Yeah.
Because there will be a part of our mind that wants to fight that thing. Because that's a bit of a death for the... keep going to use the word. I'll just use the word ego. But that part of the mind, it's a bit of a death for that, right? Because...
Absolutely, it's a death.
Yeah, it's a big death. So if you're not willing and receiving that from this part of you, then, you might find yourself getting defensive.
Yeah.
And that's where the importance, like you were saying, coming into your feeling into it before it gets stuck into an idea, but actually coming from this part of yourself. And does this feel like the truth? Does it resonate with you, or does it also...
Resonate is a great word for this.
Yeah.
Because you're actually checking your inner vibration. Is that vibrating in the same sense of what this person just said? And this person in general?
Even if it's hurtful for the mind.
Right.
Because it brings up some past stuff.
Yeah.
That you haven't been willing to open up to for a long time, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've seen it there and you've been aware of it, but you just haven't been able to take the step, take the action in changing that thing. Yeah.
And I talked about this, that you and I do it in different ways. You sometimes jokingly you poke at me when I have some inconsistency or something, right? That's one of the ways you do it, and I just kind of tell you if I think you should look at something, right? And
you're very direct. I'm not.
Well, direct. You can also be direct, but it seems to me you're only going to be direct if you feel that it's really necessary that you do it, right? Because I definitely have the feeling that you'll be direct when you need to, but then you're like, okay, you gotta know this, right? But you prefer to do it in an indirect way. But what was interesting, is that I generally, I say it, but like we spoke about last time, what you do a lot for me is that you just listen to what I say, and because you hold the space and you don't judge me, then I get a new perspective on myself, a higher perspective, where I sometimes realize without you saying anything, and I don't even know if you thought anything, but I realize after I told you something, then I realize some hours later, I'm like, oh, I'm holding on to something. I'm holding on to some ego here. And then I can release it. So even though you're not direct at all, you're still giving me a way to let go of my flaws just by holding space for me, right? And that's the two kind of friends that every person needs. And it can be the same friend as well. But two kind of friends every person needs is someone that just holds space for them without judging them, and someone who points out their flaws and helps them to correct them, right?
Two different energies.
Two different energies, but within
our soul.
But the same person can do it.
Yeah, definitely.
And as a therapist, you have to embody both at times, right?
Yeah. But it's also sensing what is needed in that. It's also just intuitively listening to what is needed in that time.
It's very interesting. When we started this podcast, you were looking at some subjects and you were like, you found 3 subjects and you were like, well, actually, it's just one subject. Maybe we'll just go with no subject or all 3 of them. What's interesting is I think we've touched on them all now. Because one of them was trusting your spontaneity. We've done that one. The other one was conscious relationships. We've done that one. What was the last one?
Personal growth or something.
All right.
But we've touched on it. We haven't like kind of.
Well, personal.
We have actually a little bit. Like,
personal growth is the process of what we've been talking about so far. Is when you recognize these patterns and then you start to make new choices, right? You introduce the space either through your partner or through your own practice, and then you consistently in your life start making new choices that are not created by old pain or old thinking.
So where are they coming from then?
Well, you think you can catch me like that, huh? You know, that's insane. That is asking people that question is a serious thing. Yeah, I don't know where any of that comes from.
It's fine.
What
what was actually coming to me was where the choices come from.
Yeah.
That's you also got that as well. That was what you received.
Where the choices in a person comes from, when it's not emotional, not instinctual, not impulsive, and not conceptual. That's behind the veil, buddy. We're not supposed to talk about that. That is something that can't be talked about. We can call it the unconscious mind, but the truth is that where actions come from is not known. It's only known that when you are not reacting to yourself, that is to say, your thoughts and your emotions, which is also your trauma, they were created in the past. So when you're reacting from those, you're reacting to the past. So if you and me are sitting here and talking and you're saying the wrong word and it triggers me, then you might say to me, oh, Toby, you're such a nice guy, right? And in the situation, you just complimented me. But maybe in my past, someone called me a nice guy many times and meant it in a bad way. And when you say it, and a negative emotion comes up in me, and I feel that I've just been slighted and it's uncomfortable and painful for me. And I want to react. I want to fight back somehow because I feel like you put something on me that I don't like, right? So in that moment, am I reacting to the moment, to what's happening? No, I'm reacting to my past. So, and if I react to my past, then I take the past problems up and suddenly again, I put a mask on you. Now you're that guy that made me feel bad. And I react, and then maybe you're gonna fall into that reaction because maybe it triggers something in your past, and then we're gonna, our egos are gonna dance.
Ego dance.
But if I'm growing in consciousness enough to see that that's happening, and I choose to say, and I say, no, I'm gonna be with this pain. Maybe I'll talk about it. Maybe I won't talk about it, depending on what makes sense. But I'm gonna be with this pain, and I'm not gonna react. Then I react from something deeper, which we don't know what is. We don't know where it comes from. Some people call it the soul. We don't know. No one truly knows. But the characteristics of that is it does not come from the past. It comes out of the present. So then I'm reacting to the moment I'm in, which means my actions are informed by what is actually real. And thus my actions are good and they're harmonious because they're literally coming out of and into everything that already is, right? Whereas that which is from the past doesn't fit in here at all. Like, you actually complimented me, but I think you insulted me. It's not, there's no consistency. I'm trying to smash two things together that are not in alignment. They don't fit together. So personal growth is the transition from trying to bring the past into the present to just being in the present and responding from the present to the present. And then everything is in harmony because then you're responding to what actually is. If you're nice to me, I'm going to take that as you being nice. And if you're mean to me, I'm going to take that as you being mean. But I'm not going to be mean to you when you're nice, or nice to you when you're mean, because that would create problems. Because that is a person who is not able to see the moment they're in. And when you can't see what you're in, then your actions are out of alignment with the moment. That creates problems. That turns into conflict over a longer amount of time. And that fills your life up with all these things that are going to trouble you and make you unhappy. So personal growth is the process of moving slowly from the past into the present, in a metaphorical and a very real sense.
And choosing to come from like what your direct experience of what is happening right now.
Right.
Not something that you have reacted from the past.
Right.
Or you're projected into the future. Right. But like what's in this like right now, us sitting here, having this conversation, drinking tea.
Yeah.
And something comes to us and we choose to act from that place.
And it's just like how this whole thing began. We're going full circle. You felt self-conscious at the start of the video. And then what you could have done is you could have spent the whole video trying to control, or you could have run away. Those were the two things
literally
you had, right?
Gonna run out of this.
You could have fought, you could have fled, or you could have frozen, right? That's what you could have done.
Yeah.
But you chose to
go
be
beyond.
You chose consciousness. You chose to create a space, feel your body, feel your emotions, look at your mind. You made a space for yourself, and 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, you weren't self-conscious at all anymore. You were back to the unborn mind, which interfaces perfectly with the present. Because why is the unconscious mind so good at living? It's because it doesn't have any form, so it doesn't get in the way, right? The unconscious mind isn't anywhere, so that means that it can take the whole thing in. It interfaces perfectly
between
with
you
life.
and me, individually, everything.
Right. Because if the mind was there, if it had a color, if it interpreted, if it had anything, then how could it, reality would punch up against it? Because if it had characteristics, if it had a shape, then parts of reality would not be able to enter it. And it wouldn't be able to act harmoniously. But because since the unborn is not there, then reality simply flows into it perfectly. That's why the real mind cannot be seen. And it has to be that way. Because only that way can you truly live in tune with reality and with the existence. And that's why it's so important to realize on the conscious path that you are actually nothing. You aren't anything. And that's why it can be so difficult for people waking up, because as every person wakes up knows, every awakening is a step out of the ego, and it's some kind of realization that you don't really know who you are anymore. And that can be difficult at first because you think there's supposed to be something in that space where you're supposed to be. But when you figure out that, when you find peace with that, that's when you figure out, wow, this is actually a freedom. I'm free to be. You were saying?
It's interesting because you say this with the nothingness, right?
Right.
And I remember when I experienced this, like the first time I woke up, truly woke up, and saw what we most of the time don't see in our reality. But this, the truth, or the you call it awakening, but like this, whatever it is, right, that's going on. And I remember one of the key parts that like kind of led to that point was this thing of like nothingness,
right,
and emptiness, I think it was actually. And the interesting thing was that like I fought so much with that. I was like, how could there be nothing there? I look at this TV, I look at you, and how could there be nothing there? How could it be empty or meaningless or whatever?
Right. Because
everything, right, if I look from my mind, has a meaning, has a color, has a. So how could there be nothing there?
Yeah.
And this kind of like, it was like this kind of like, my mind was like, that's just like nothingness and emptiness or meaningless. Like, and I remember I was so caught up with this until this moment, it just kind of like fell away. And I was just like, I remember I was actually just sitting at work and contemplating this. It was over like a weekend seminar thing. And I was just like, I'm just trying to go grab it with this thing. And then I was like contemplating these two things. And something clicked, and it just kind of like, it was like the window into the world opened up for the very first time in my life. And I walked out the back of the where I work, and I looked at like the tree, and I heard this bird, and I was like, wow, it was like I never heard a bird before.
Yeah.
And I looked at the tree, and I was like, I'd like never seen a tree before.
Yeah.
And this tree was like glowing. It was like literally I could like see the current in the tree.
Yeah.
And I was just like, everything around me was literally like, it was like I'd seen it for the first time.
Right.
Or felt it for the first time. And I remember riding my bike home. It was like quite a bit younger than that. And it was like every person I was like looking at, I could like see into their being or something.
Yeah.
And it was like every person was like the most special, most like illuminant kind of being that I'd seen. It was magical. Honestly,
And each person you saw, were they separate from you?
No, that's the surprising thing. It was like one kind of connected into the other. So I was really like just, and that's the thing in that space. Like it didn't last that long, right? But in the time it did last, it was like everything, the whole universe was connected, and it was such like the vibration or the kind of energy was so alive that I was like, I didn't know where to go with that as well. So I was just like, wow. But I remember like saying like, this is better than any drug I could ever imagine taking or anything. And I think that experience was like a glimpse or a window into what some people call enlightenment, or some people call spiritual awakening or whatever it is. And it was really interesting that you touched on this nothingness, because that was one of the pieces that put the puzzle, well, maybe not even the puzzle, maybe let the puzzle disperse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so many people who don't understand spirituality or we're starting out are saying nothingness, but that doesn't sound very good.
And I've got to be careful with this actually, because I remember sometimes when I've contemplated this in the past, then there's been months afterwards where I've been very awake, and it can be very energetic. So
I'll facilitate you no matter what happens. Don't worry.
I'm not sure if you're. Yeah, I think you're able to facilitate actually. There's very few people in my life who can facilitate that energy, but that's I trust that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what identification with ego does. It conceals the fact that we're all connected, and that the whole thing just is illuminant. It's just glowing, like it's just vibrating and glowing and alive.
And that's the thing also with that as well. Like what came to me then with like, if we're all connected, how could we bring harm upon something that we're connected to?
Exactly.
That would be like harming ourselves or harming our. And it actually goes even nothing beyond that. It's like when you're that connected, to do harm to something, even yourself, is like, it's almost like,
yeah,
it's almost not possible because of how in tune you are with like the connectivity or what would happen after that kind of thing.
And this is why the highest paths do not teach rules; they only teach awareness. Because awareness creates connection, and connections make you do no harm. Nothing more is necessary. Because when you see that you are the world and the world is you, how could you harm it? You don't need a rule telling you not to kill or not to hurt or not to lie or steal, because you see that it's all you. How could you harm yourself, right? So you don't need to have rules or practice being a good boy or a good girl or whatever. Just become more conscious, and you see how everything is you, and then you can't harm it. And your energy becomes so positive that to do something negative feels wrong. It's incompatible with your energy.
But you don't even have to like have the thought that it feels wrong, because you will stop yourself before.
The thought will be eradicated by your consciousness the moment it arises, even if it arises. Like a snowflake on a hot stove. But that's how it is. And we have the energy in the room. Very interesting.
Yeah.
the consciousness is in the room.
Unborn, universal.
Yeah. And even it doesn't require enlightenment to reach the point. Even I don't harm other people because I can feel that they're me. Not in the sense that I feel enlightened and I can, feel the pulsating life in all of us. I had that as well in my enlightenment experience. But I'm connected enough to myself to still be able to feel that other people are me. I know that when I'm someone is that I can't harm them. Because I can tell that they are a being just like me, thinking and feeling like me. And I don't like to be hurt. So why would they like to be hurt? I'm taking someone just like me and I'm doing something to them that I've suffered so many times because of other people. I can't do it. Because that would just be me being a bad person in the same way that people were bad to me when I didn't like it. So I can't do that. So just take consciousness as the rule, become more conscious and connect more to yourself. You'll connect more to the whole world, to animals, to trees, to leaves, to people. You don't need to worry so much about...
Also to yourself.
To yourself.
Yeah.
You don't need to do bad things because the truth is everything is connected. You might not see it, but one easy way to discover it is the more you go into yourself, the more you feel everything else.
And that is personal growth, right?
That's personal
Working
growth.
on yourself.
Because you're literally becoming bigger.
Expand.
Until you expand and you fill the whole world, right?
And that's it from us today, I would say.
That's
if
it for
there's
today.
Anything else you want to add?
I think that was perfect. So
thanks for listening in and
watching.
Thanks for watching today.
Thanks for watching.
We hope you really enjoyed this talk, this presence, this energy. It was really interesting where it kind of went to today. And if you enjoyed listening or watching, feel free to give us a review or comment, because that helps more people get to listen to this conversation and this. Well, actually, I would just say more people becoming more and more awake and aware. And
we also
that's what we want, right?
We love interacting with our listeners. That's
true.
Actually
Yeah.
one of the big reasons why we do podcasts, is because we want to interact with our community, because that's really fun for us.
Yeah.
So we want to get more people together. So that's a big thing for us. And we're going to be setting up a website in the future once I figure out how, where people can comment on the episodes and we can have little discussions and all this stuff, because that would be a lot of fun to work with. And
in person, we've been talking that for a long time too. So
yeah.
It's about time we get something going and basically just get this community together and bring up the energy and just meet all the people who are listening, which would be, or some of the people listening, which would be amazing.
Yeah, I think that's that. See you on the trail.
See you on the trail.